Continuing with the theme of ongoing research into this video, I want to speak about the relationship between prayer and healing. In the previous video, I spoke about the double slit experiment and what are some of the implications of this experiment. It was an in-depth look into it, and I did mention at the end of it that perhaps it is possible that with our conscious thoughts, we can affect things at the micro level. We're not gonna manifest something out of thin air or anything like that. But at the micro level, there has been some interesting studies related to this and how people can regulate their own bodies, can regulate their own blood pressure, for example, and so on and so forth. But there has also been some research about the effects of quote-unquote prayer on people's health, and some of it ties a little bit into energy healing, it ties a little bit into alternative healing, healers, Reiki, all these strange things that little by little are beginning to be more seriously taken by science. Now, in this video, I speak about some of the issues and some of the challenges that come with these studies, and I mentioned one of the authors on these studies, and I got a little bit in depth into what exactly might be the reason of why these the current studies that we have, because they have been done. We currently have studies on prayer and healing. The issue is that the results are mixed. They're all over the place. There's no way to truly know what's going on at the moment, but it might have to do with the way that the studies are being conducted. Now, I've spoken about this before. I'm gonna link it on the screen right now, probably. I talked about energy healing with some of the experiments of Dean Radin and Bill Bengtsson. In my opinion, these are the most effective, actual, replicable, more in-depth researched experiments that have been done in terms of quote-unquote energy healing, which, as Bill Bengtsson explains, and I addressed that in that video, it's not really energy healing. There's something else going on. So I'm gonna link it somewhere on the screen right now, and I'm gonna also be posting this a link to these videos below. But in any case, in today's video, if I want to put a question out to give an indication of what the video is going to be about, is going to be, can quote-unquote prayer heal people? And why is the current research flawed? Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Having that out of the way, I can start going into this. Testing prayer. Can science prove the healing power of prayer? If prayer affects health, then patients, doctors, and policymakers should all want to know. Scientific research has returned mixed results. Part of the confusion stems from how prayer is studied. So in my previous video, I was talking about the double slit experiment and how truly understanding it could really raise questions about what were going on, and how, while you're not gonna alter the universe or access a multiverse by shifting your conscious thoughts, you might have a bit of an effect at the micro level, perhaps at the cellular level. You can see all these stories of Wim Hof or this sort of thing, where people have reported that they have altered things about themselves just with the use of their conscious thoughts. So at the micro level, it's very likely that this can be affected. But is this prayer then? What exactly is prayer? Now, here we have Candy Gunter Brown, PhD from Harvard, I believe. I read a little bit into her contribution, into her articles, and I'm not really sure why I didn't go on studying her, but she has done she has author of Healing Gods and Testing Prayer. She has done this research, and you can just go into her studies. She's got YouTube videos and that sort of thing. Now, it's interesting here that this is the Health Post. This is of their May 2012. Now, this post was published on the now closed HuffPost contributor platform. Contributors control their own work and post it freely to our site. If you need to flag this entry as abusive, send us an email. So there was just like a contributor things, because of course anything that has to do with prayer or spirituality or anything like that, the mainstream media wanted to stray away from it. It is now until recently that some of these topics have been coming back, gaining more attention, given all the recent research that has been done and everything that is coming out. So when sickness strikes, people around the world pray for healing. Many of the faithful claim that prayer has cured them of blindness, deafness, and metastasized cancers, and some believe they have been resurrected from the dead. Now, what does this mean? I actually have I made a video about this cancer on mice by a researcher named Bill Bengtson, I believe. I might link this below. But in any case, and some believe they have been resurrected from the dead. Now, in near-death experiences, a lot of the people claiming, going through the reports, they say that they have been healed while under near-death experience. Usually they report that they come back from things that they should have been absolutely dead, and they are given the choice: do you want to go back, or do you want to cross the portal, or cross the river, or cross through the door, or something like that? It varies depending on people. And when they decide to come back, they say, suddenly I was healed or cured, or somehow I was, revived by doctors, even though I had like a 1% chance of surviving whatever happened to me. And I came back from the dead. This is the resurrected from the dead thing here. But the cancer thing is very interesting. I'm gonna go into that further. The can and should science test such claims? Numerous scientists say no, concerned that empirical studies of prayer will be misused to advance religious agendas. And some religious practitioners agree with this restraint, worrying that scientific testing could undermine faith. Now, this is 100% accurate. If some of these studies go on forward, we have enough dogmatism in religions like Christianity, where they say, "Oh, you have to abide by all the rules of God, or He will punish you with a cancer, or He will punish you with an illness." And that's the common idea. That's the common concept. But it's not about. It doesn't seem to be about punishment anywhere. I have spoken about this before. I'm probably gonna link the video somewhere along the screen. I'm gonna post all these videos below, because I have approached these topics. It literally, when the religious figure of Jesus now is talking about these quote-unquote sins and calls people who are sick sinners, it is because of a whole process within them. He never says like, "Oh, this is a punishment from God," or anything like that. Somehow, dogmatic Christianity has turned has come up with these ideas that God is a punisher and He will give you these diseases. So if it comes out that prayer is actually useful when treating illnesses, this dogmatic Christianity might say, "Oh, then you must pray, then you must abide by everything we tell you, because this is true and it's been proved by science." So there's a huge risk of tying the results of prayer with dogmatic philosophies. And according to the thing that I researched, it has nothing to do with that. But I'll go into that further, and vice versa. Now, some religious practitioners might say, what if it doesn't happen? Does that mean, even though we are all praying for whoever, and what if nothing happens? Does that mean that God is not real? A lot of people are afraid of that. A lot of people do not want to confront, and it's even in the scriptures says, "Do not test the Lord your God," or something of that nature. And that is true. You don't want to go into that, but it's for different reasons, not for what people might think. So there's this whole notion that there is a God, that there is a bearded man in the sky, and is He gonna like it when I pray? Is He gonna judge me? What is He gonna think? It's not a He. We're speaking about more complex things perhaps more cosmological things that have to do with what quantum mechanics are starting to put forward in terms of creating reality, in terms of conceptualizing reality and bringing into the physical. All right, so part of the confusion stems from how prayer is studied. Most research is on distant intercessory prayer. Intercessors are given the first name and condition of someone they do not know and told to pray. Researchers set up double-blinded trials because this is how they are accustomed to studying health intervention, and base conclusions on the efficacy of the prayer solely on whether subjects in the experimental group exhibit better health than those in the control group. Now, this is where a lot of people get lost and they start going, okay, blinded trial, what are these people talking about? And someone who just have a few minutes to read this little article on HuffPost might say, oh, okay, well, okay, whatever. But it's pretty simple. So what is a double-blind study? I just want to get this out of the way. What is a blinded study? How do they happen? What do they entail? It is very simple, actually, and it might be the whole cause of why it is so hard to take these these documented prayer experiments seriously. Or perhaps this is the very reason why it is so hard to study them in this way in the first place. So the 20th century was marked by skepticism and disillusionment, great ideology of positivism, and the belief that exact science was always accurate, measurable, and unbiased, dumbled down. Philosophers of epistemology, the how do we know what we know branch of philosophy, theorized that even empirical data extracted from controlled lab experiments can be skewed. Now, of course, this is something that I approached in my previous video. This is the whole thing of why quantum physics and understanding double-slit experiment is so important. Because scientists used to say we have the scientific method, we recreate it over and over and over, but what the double-slit experiment put forward was that perhaps the conscious observation of these experiments, even by the scientist himself, might have something to do with the results. Now the double-blinded ways of testing this might affect into that whole process of the researchers trying to figure out what's going on, and even the people involved in the very experiment. If observation collapses the way particles function into reality, into particle form, the very observation, the data thrown out into the universe, as I said in the previous video, perhaps when you do these double-blinded ways of doing it, it just skews everything. But let's just go straight into what that double-blinded experiment is. Okay, as many of us know, there is no perfect method in science. This is what we are beginning to find out, and this is why these this type of articles are coming back stronger. While in 2012 they were perhaps they were trying to suppress them and to stay away from them. It's only until recently that we're starting to understand all of these things, that more than anything they are becoming more mainstream because of social media and how easy it is for people to share information, and this has been increased exponentially every year for the last maybe 10 or 20 years. So we're at a point now where we are getting a lot of information all over the place. So a blinded clinical trial means that one or more parties are unaware of the treatment being received. Usually it's the participants in the clinical trial that are blinded, meaning they don't know whether they are being treated with the drug in development or a placebo. A placebo is an inactive substance given to a control group in order to assess the real drug in testing. Now, this is a key right here. I have a video on this. I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen, and I'm gonna link it below, about the placebo effect and how these things, so the collapse of the wave function through observation is one thing. The placebo effect is another key item into what might actually be happening in all of these quote-unquote prayer healings, which might be a little bit more complex and not developed or not created or not interceded by a bearded man in the sky who is judging us on whether or how we pray or whatever. Has to do with something more complex perhaps. So the logic behind blinding participants is that by not knowing whether they received a drug or a placebo, the results they report are more authentic, since they are not influenced by the belief of what's supposed to happen to their bodies and how they're supposed to feel. Again, exactly. So this is what they want. They want the classical mechanics. They want the classical physics. They want the objective world to react to something subjective. What we see in the double-slit experiments is that reality does not function like this. It needs observation. It needs conscious thought in order to be something. So this is why we have this huge discussion currently in terms of science. If conscious observation has more impact in reality than we think, then all of these double-blinded experiments and all of these things can go out of the window. It's no longer useful for us if something is not really more authentic than when we look at it, than when it's not blinded. And the placebo effect, which is not a placebo, what the hell is the placebo effect? What is it? A lot of this is a serious concept in the medical field, the placebo effect. Oh, if they know, they're gonna feel better, but nobody has really sat down and said, okay, but what really is the placebo effect? What are the implications of it? If people, knowing that they can be healed, actually present improvement in healing, which is what the data suggests, and this is why the medical fields take this placebo effect seriously, what is it then? It is the power of their conscious mind acting upon the real physical world. As I said, I'm gonna link it. I'm gonna post that below. Okay, sometimes the staff administering the treatment, the physician responsible for the assessment of it, or the people who interpret the results can be blinded too. By blinding the medical staff, the team behind the clinical trial ensures that no one can accidentally reveal to the patients whether they're receiving the actual drug or are in the placebo control group. So nobody knows, right? They cannot reveal to them. Everybody's blinded. Nobody knows. They want the objective reality of what's happening. This is awfully similar to the experiments done in the double-slit experiment. As I reviewed, what they did with the data is that they had some sensors measuring the particles, and nobody would look at them. They would burn them. They would destroy them. And that's what they say, oh, the observer is not necessary, because even if we burn them, no one knows. They're all blinded. So they blinded themselves by not knowing whether the particle went to the slips. They didn't know whether it went or not. They destroyed the records of the data. They burned them because they wanted to know what, okay, if nobody looks at it, if nobody sees the tree falling in the woods, did it actually happen? It's the same thing that we're talking about. They were all blinded, but it actually happened because the data was already out there. So it's sort of the same thing here. It's quite tricky. I'm gonna be building upon that. But what I want to point out here is that we are speaking about the same thing. The double blind, the triple blind experiments are the same as those scientists trying to burn the records of the double-slit experiment. Okay, single blind are studies which blind one party, usually those who receive the treatment. Double blind means, this is the one that I have done in prior testing documented findings. Double blind means that both the participants and the people who collect the data are in the dark about which treatment is received. So they just look at the data. Nobody knows anything. Okay, triple blind takes the double blind a step further. The people who analyze the collected data are unaware as well in order to ensure they interpret it objectively. So is everyone is blinded in this triple blind experiment. So how are they gonna know? Nobody knows. What they want to know is what's happening in the actual physical objective world when no one knows, no one shares this information. But now this might be why the whole thing is skewed and why the whole thing is not working in the first place. Alright, so now that we have a better idea of what a single blind study is, a double blind, and a triple blind study is, this is basically what it means to develop the collect the data are dark about the treatment. So they don't know, nobody knows, they just want the objective physical reality, as I said. We can go back to this other article. So, Candy Gunter Brown, PhD, I think she's from Harvard, something like that. She's the one who conducted these experiments. She's author of Healing Gods and Testing Prey, as I said, and just going here into Chrome, so people can see that I also use Chrome, but I rather use Edge for my own reasons. It's the same thing, so there's all about her. She's been working on that. That article is from 2012 to 2021. As of the making of these videos, there's a lot of pushing forward on her theories, and she's got a bunch of videos. She does studies into yoga and some other things, alternative medicine, mindfulness, etc. Science and miraculous healing. I watched this before. I think in this video she speaks about what I'm gonna be talking about on that article. So anybody can just Google it if you're interested in her books. She has made this. Now the question is, do we believe her? Do we believe what she is saying? Well, we need to dig deeper to see what exactly she is saying. So she is criticizing these double-blinded controlled trials. So part of the confusion stems from how prayer is studied. Most research is on distant intercessory prayer. As I think I read this before. Intercessors are given the first name, the condition of someone they do not know and told to pray, or such a set of double-blinded trials, because this is how they are accustomed to studying health interventions. Base conclusions on the efficacy of the prayer solely on whether the subjects in the experimental group exhibit better health than those in the control group. So now we know what this double-blinded experiment is. Now what she's proposing is she's proposing a different type of approach, what she calls PIP. But when people actually pray for healing, they usually get up close to someone they know, touch the person, the idea of touch, the idea of healing with quote-unquote energy. I'm gonna approach that in the future as part of it. Empathize with their sufferings instead of just giving a random name like, okay, you're gonna pray for this person and they might be ill with this disease, just pray for them. They don't even know the person, they have no connection, they have no idea of who they are. This one is about people who they know, they work with people straight. It's a close proximity to the person. Now if we go, and I've covered this before, I'm not sure if I have a video on this, I should make a I certainly mentioned it, probably in the Altered State of Consciousness video. It has to do with rituals from ancient Native Americans, what they did, and one of the most important parts of the rituals was for the subject of the healing to be present. And when I say present, I do not only mean like there, I mean present and involved with the healing in order for it to take effect. So this is certainly a factor in this quote-unquote prayer healing or ritual healing or energy healing. There's many ways to approach this. What I call proximal intercessory prayer, or PIP. Double-blinded controlled trials are not the only or even the best. Now she's criticizing the way that these studies have been done, a way to gauge the effects of this kind of prayer practice. Now how it says over here, these experiments have been done, the documented prayers, but they have turned mixed results. Sometimes negative, sometimes positive, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What exactly is the variable? Now that we can argument that this is just random chance, but as I made a video before about this, I don't want to go into that right now, but I will link it anywhere in the screen right now, and I will definitely post it below. I made a video of what I think is the most recent data on this energy healing or ritual healing or whatever, from two individuals that I went into. I'm gonna post it. It has to do with Dean Radin and Bill Bengtson, and they have come to replicable results. It's not only mixed results that they have done through their experiments. And now Dean Radin, if you go on and Google Dean Radin, I've spoken about his work many times in this channel. he is one of the most rigorous scientists out there doing these sort of experiments, and it is, to me, it's baffling that there's not more emphasis put into his studies. But anyways, I'm gonna link it somewhere, and I will go into that probably in the next video after this one, because on this one I just want to talk about these double-blinded and why exactly they are not the best, as she's saying. They are not the best way to gauge the effects of this kind of prayer practice. Now, as I said, she's done these studies in the past 8 years in PIP by Pentecostal and charismatic Christians. So her focus is in Christianity, of course. But as I said, she's done mindfulness and yoga and whatnot. So she actually made those. She's done this research. So she is now proposing a way to better gauge the effects of this. Now, this was 2012. There are better ways, as I said, and the ones that I talk about are more recent. But she's just proposing her healing claims documents. She's got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and camera 4. These 4 steps to kind of like get a better idea. Are the healing claims documented? So she goes on to speak about Daisy, who had worn hearing aids for 30 years. She had progressively worsening. She had this PIP therapy, what she is proposing, and this lady Daisy said, felt my fingers on fire and the warmth of the Holy Spirit inside me, after which she could hear without hearing it. So there was a notable improvement, and this is what she's saying. The medical records do not prove that God healed Daisy through prayer, but do confirm Daisy's claim of improved hearing. So this testing prayer, the focus of science in testing whether prayer or not has an effect, is not proof of God. It's not proof that, the God of the Christians, the dogma. This is what I said before. There's this huge risk that the dogmatic Christians could say, oh, what we're saying is true because it's proved by science. This is not about that. However, the fact that prayer is the variable in improving a person's health could be something to look at, and this is exactly what has been happening in the latter years. And this is empirical data. This is something that, if it is able to be replicated, like as I said, Dean Radin and Bill Bankston have done, then, how she says, we should know about it. Doctors, policymakers, everybody should know about this. And everybody should explain exactly what is the placebo effect. We don't know what's at work here. All right, so that's the first one. So she says that everything needs to be documented, and this is empirical data. You don't just throw it off because it's prayer. If it can be empirical, if it can be replicated, it should be data and it should be documented. Number 2, how do sufferers perceive healing prayer? Now, this has to do with whether they have a faith or not into the healing. The 70% of the correspondents had a current need for healing. The most common complaint was pain. 52% reported healing, but few of those claim healing by faith. Instead, they defined healing as noticeable improvement of symptoms. So, how do they perceive it? Was it faith healing, or did you just improve? Or did you have faith? Now, on the experiments from Dean Radin he's done, it doesn't matter if the person has faith or not, but that gets a little bit more tricky, because even if they don't have faith, however, the idea that they are being healed is already in their mind, regardless of whether they have faith or not. So they have put things into motion already. I'm going to go into that further in the future. So clinical traits, can health outcomes of prayer be measured? So now she goes on healing subjects. This was in Mozambique where she did her study, and because I would assume some missionaries just going into these poorer countries where they don't have access to high-end medical facilities or medical procedures, where they try this alternative medicine, and that's the only thing they have, and they just go ahead and do it. And she reported on this. And she managed to capture some of the data where some of the subjects actually presented some improvement So it says that this individual had no responses to sounds at 100 dBHL, and then he responded to 60 after using her PIP method. And so there's different accounts of this work, and as I said, that's probably more on her book if anyone is truly interested in this. Although, do healing experiences produce lasting effects, such as George reported healing from an untreatable brain tumor. Prayer alone claimed they were still healed as many as 8 years later. Now, there are other instances that I've read some reports where going through the placebo effect. There was one story where they tell the subject who had cancer, they tell him that, hey, the doctor did the procedure, now you are healed, you're gonna be okay. The doctor knew that this patient had no possibilities to survive, but he still, it was some sort of a confusion. I'm gonna see if I can find the video where I saw that. And he decided to go through with it. He told them that, and the patient improved and got rid of the cancer, but then afterwards the doctor decided to tell him that it was a placebo. There was no procedure done on them, or it was just like a sugar pill or something of that nature. And then the effects of the cancer returned to the patient after he realized that nothing had been done for him. So it wasn't the placebo, but his perception on the reality at hand. And then when that was broken, it reverted. So it was him causing his own illness and reverting it. So, okay, bringing these 4 cameras, these 4 steps that she is proposing, into focus produces a more complete picture of how prayer affects health than using any single study method. Can science prove the healing power of prayer? Science cannot prove the existence or non-existence of a suprahuman force or whether such an entity answers prayer. As I said, this is not proving that there is a bearded man in the sky, just looking through all the prayers, seeing if they're gonna heal or not. But it is an empirical question how prayer practices affect health, and we can and should use empirical methods to answer this question. Indeed, if it can be replicable, like the studies from Dean Radin and Bill Bankston, that the healing is happening following a specific procedure, this is empirical data. We have to go into the bottom of what's going on here. This does not mean that there's a birdman in the sky looking at the prayers or whatever. The truth is more complex than it seems. Okay, so now having this information, and knowing what a single blind, double blind, triple blind study is, we can gather a better idea of what is going on. So the main thing is that there is information, there are experiments, there is data, but it's all mixed in. There's another article that I wanted to check out from NCBI, going on about the issues with this testing and these experiments, and how the placebo effect might get into the way. But what is the placebo effect in the first place? That should be the main question. I made a video about this as well. I'm gonna post it somewhere on the screen, and also you can find it below. I'm gonna be bringing up all of these in the further videos as I go on with this topic. But in any case, so the main issue is that these double-blind experiments bring a lot of mixed results, but when they use methods like Candy Gunter Brown's method, the PIP, which is the PIP and PIP Pentecostal, what she called it, proximal intercessory prayer, where they are in contact with the subject, the healer and the subject. The person who is praying is in contact with the person who is receiving the prayer or receiving the healing, and there is touch sometimes, that is quote-unquote energy healing. There are all of these things, and when this is done, the results are a little bit more consistent. Now, she's done a whole book about this, as I said, Testing Prayer, Science and Healing by Candy Gunter Brown. But there's also Dean Radin doing these experiments, and Bill Bankston, link is below. They are getting replicable results. They are getting consistent results using direct data. using this proximal sort of thing, where not the double-blind experiments. I think Dean Ray did some of this as well, but more, I shall say, structure studies, more proximal studies, and the data is showing that this manner of experiments is more accurate, it's more consistent than the double-blind thing. So what may be happening here? As I said, it was very important for me to put out that double slit experiment, because that is the key to everything. So we're tying this new data. This is data, as she says. It doesn't matter. It's not going to prove there's a bird guy in the sky, but it is proving that prayer can be affecting results in real life. All of this is empirical data. So we have the data here, and we have the newer theories like the holographic principles and the double slit experiment. This is empirical data. Now, when we tie all of these into ancient philosophies, and we overlap all of these together, the empirical data, the new theories, the newer reports on altered states of consciousness, the ancient philosophies from different religions, we can start, whatever comes out from from filtering all of these layers, can get us an approximate truth. That is the purpose with this project, A Rational Divine Outline. And now, however, the first book that I self-published is about Jesus, not Christianity. It's about what Jesus said. Now, I am not a Christian. I do not proclaim or defend Christianity in any way. I do go into the scriptures and I read in between the lines. I go deep into it. So I'm gonna bring a passage from the scriptures, and now I'm gonna be making this, and I'm also gonna bring a concept from Eastern Eastern philosophies. Now, the second part of the outline is going to be on Eastern philosophy, and I'm tying all of these on because it's the same thing at the end of the day. So we can make the argument that both of these things are speaking about the same thing. And at the end, I'm going to clear out how are some of the scriptures and some of the Eastern concepts tying up with the single blind, double blind, and triple blind experiments, along with the double slit, what the double slit experiments are suggesting in quantum physics. So if we go into Matthew 18:18, we find these nice little images that people use, and back and forward, they're posting on social media. Well, King James BibleOnline.org. Verily I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever ye shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Now, I've made a video about this, which I find it quite interesting. That I've been reviewing some of the older videos, and I'm posting clips on my Facebook page. By the way, you can follow me on Facebook, and I'm posting the clips from the videos that I post on YouTube, or like more on a shorter format, and I'm explaining a little bit further those little details. So I recently posted one on Facebook. I'm actually going to link it below in this video, about how this process of binding, what it might be actually talking about. So when I talk about this video, I go a little bit into the idea of the holographic principle, and how it says what we bind on earth, we bind in heaven. When we lose on earth, we lose in heaven. This could be talking about us acting upon two different realms of reality, two different realms of existence. If you go into heaven, I don't know if I have it here. No, I have some other word, but the heaven, Uranus, is the outside, the other plane, whatever is beyond. So the fear of Jesus, he spoke about, whenever praying, whenever going into this, he spoke about almost a ritualistic way of praying, of going into the Father, into going into the kingdom within, and asking and doing all these things. Then he spoke about this, about binding on earth as it is in heaven. So he's speaking about two realms of reality. Now, just to sort of get some context here, what does the double slit experiment is showing us? That there are two worlds, the world of the micro and the physical world of particles, the world of the wave, the world of the particles. And it is through observation that we collapse the wave function into creating a reality It is through a process, may you call it binding on earth, which will bind in all these. Now there are these theories that we're working in more than even 2 dimensions, but more than dimensions, but on that later. So this is one of the arguments that I'm making in the outline, is that some of the older outtakes on Christianity try to explain this passage, for example, breaking down the key parts of Matthew 18:18. Truly I tell you, precisely what Jesus considers his most important points. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Jesus gives authority to the church to pronounce forgiveness of sins or to withhold in the case of unrepentance. How do we derive this? What even is the basis to derive this? To bind on earth is to make official to people the judgments of heaven as discerned by the gathered church. The church is an important word. So the church, when what we know as church today, is a very institutionalized, dogmatic, group or structure that we already know. What was church in the ancient times? It was just people. People gathered. That was the church. So, and whatever you lose on earth will be loosed in heaven. The freedom of forgiveness is eternal and declared in both realms. Freedom of forgiveness. I don't understand why. The church is endowed with authority as a means of grace for the believer to fail to submit. I don't know how they come up with these things. But in any case, if we go into context about this Matthew 18:18, so it goes, if your brother or sister sins, go on and point out their fault just between the 2 of you. Now, I marked this up because also in the healings and in some of the scriptures, there's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of make sure no one knows. When Jesus is performing these quote-unquote miracles, these healings, he tells the participants, make sure no one knows. Just between the 2 of you, he says here. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they won't listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. This is going into the collective conscience. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Now, I don't know about this pagan or tax collector. As I've said in some other videos, Jesus was a human being which was interpreting a message, perhaps a higher message from different sources, but he was still a human trying to explain whatever he knew in his own words. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, and now this is key, anything. It's not about something doing with the forgiveness of the church and the authority on the unrepentance. It's about anything. And this is all over the scriptures. Ask for anything with quote-unquote shameless audacity, and it shall be given to you. It will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I. Now this is important. Am I with them? This is a difference in my name, the Jesus or whatever. This is a translation issue. So when this for where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them in my name. This am I is the name. This is all together. It's not one thing in my name or there am I. All of this goes together in the original Greek translations of these concepts. And this is the principle of society, the I am. The being that Moses encountered in the burning bush told them, I am what I am. I am what will become to be. This is something it is quite complex. It's called the principle of society. I made a whole video about this. I'm going to post it. I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen. You can find it below. This has to do with the very act of being, with embracing beingness itself. It is about consciousness. It is not about the name of Jesus. It is not about Jesus the individual. It's about becoming the higher consciousness. Becoming this being that perhaps we all are. Okay, so he is speaking about from where 2 or 3 gather in my name, and I am, in the consciousness. just between the two of you. Now, another thing about the healings is that I researched these healings. I've gone through the scriptures in the original Greek language, and he always asks the subjects of the healings, "Do you believe that I can do this?" And then after the healing, he says, "It is because of your faith that this has been done to you." That always is, it's almost like if he's asking permission for, as I said, it also says, make sure no one knows. Now, how does all of these religious, where many would consider religious woo-woo or nonsense, and I'm sure that at this point of the video, I've lost a lot of people who might have been watching before, but how does this connect to a blinded study, a single blind, double blind, triple blind study? So he's saying, with 2 or 3 gather on my name, make sure that only the 2 of you know, and so on and so forth. What is important about others knowing, about 2 or 3 gathering in order to bind in these 2 worlds of the, we can call it the physical and the non-physical. We can call this quote unquote heaven, the non-physical. This world of wave particle possibilities which become bound on that. Well, when the double blind, no one knows. So if you think about the double slit experiment, it is when they observe the particle going through the data, when someone acknowledges this, that the information in the universe is put out, and then a reality emerges from that. It's no longer the wave particle function. It's no longer the world of possibilities. It's like we are collapsing into a reality, and it takes consciousness to do this, either as an intention or the actual observation. This is why in the previous video the argument was, we don't need the observer, only the data going through. But whoever created the machine, and the very knowledge that the data is being recorded, is an intention created by consciousness or by someone's consciousness. So when we were talking about the double blind, if everybody knew about the healing, of that there were prayers, of that this was happening, there's something in motion, there is information, there is data going into the universe. When she does the PIP, the Proximal Intercessory prayer, or the document healings of the rating, this is information that is being gathered, that is being put attention into. This is what happens. So if you go into some of the research, the documented prayer, this is what I want to go moving forward with this. There's a lot of documented healings and documented reports, documented healings that come, and so on and so forth. Now, there's no hard data on this, because as I've been saying, as some other people like Candy Gunter Brown has been saying, there is no real way there is not an efficient way to carry on these experiments until now, because of the way they have been done. But the information is out there. There are tons of reports. There are tons of information about this, quote unquote, either miracles or healing improvements. If you go into the ancient rituals of the Native Americans, this is one of the arguments that I've done in the past, that they were not stupid. They knew what they were doing, and if it's such an entrenched part of their culture, of the rituals, to do these healing rituals, is because it worked at some point. These people were not stupid. They were working with something that we are barely starting to understand through science, through our own means. And now when people are told that they are going to be healed, and when they are present, like in the rituals and so on and so forth, the report, the results are more consistent than with the single blind, double blind, triple blind experiments, as I said. So going into some of the research of the healings of the figure of Jesus, as I said, I made a video about this. I'm gonna link it somewhere on the screen, because in that I go on about why is this figure of Jesus calling people who are sick sinners, and he explains on how they created more or less their whole situation. Like, if this was not like some sort of punishment from God, this was because of them sinning. But the concept of sin for Jesus was quite different to what most people think. It has to do with a process of thinking, has to do with this binding and letting go. So in all the words in Greek, when we find this letting go, this repent, this forgiveness, it's about loose, untie, release. It's not about annul. It's about letting a thought go. It's not about forgiveness or repentance or anything like that. Even when we go into metanoia, which is repentance, is meta with or amid noia, to exercise the mind. It seems as if this figure of Jesus was speaking about a mental process which has more to do with consciousness and creating a reality than anything else. If we go into the idea of Genesis, genomai, which is using some of the texts related to this process of binding, where he said that we are acting into two realms. Genomai is to come into being, to emerge, to happen, and then untie, release. He's speaking about the basics of reality, it seems. And now, as I said, I started a Rational Divine Outline at the first publication of the Ghost of Jesus, speaking about, because I wanted to completely debunk Christianity. And what I found instead, because I was never a Christian, I didn't know about like in-depth Christianity until I wanted to debunk the whole Christianity thing. Then I found a bunch of very interesting ancient texts which were right on par with modern research, and this is the first part of the outline. Now, the second part, as I said, has to do with the Eastern concept. So for Jesus, these people who were sick, they were sinning, they had some issue in their mind, in their way of thinking, that created all this hamartia. The concept of sin is to miss the mark, to miss the right way. He was speaking about more deeper cosmological concepts, and when we go into the concept of Eastern philosophy, and we go into the concept of karmic seeds, which I make the argument in the second part of the outline that these karmic seeds are more or less what we consider sins in Western ancient philosophies. This is the essence of karma. When karma is dormant, it sleeps in this seed form. When it is latent, it exists as samskaras, as embedded beliefs deep in the unconscious zone of the mind, and as liminal fantasies encountered in dreams, hypnotic states, and in meditation. When it is active, it is present in all 7 levels, and we're aware of the force craving or desire. So this is the unconscious zone. This is the in-depth ideas that emerge. This is why the Tibetan Buddhists and some of the Eastern monks, what they want to do is to suppress any karmic seed, at least any negative karmic seed. They want to let go of any thought that emerges, because as soon as you bite your tongue, as you clench your teeth, you are creating a karmic seed. This is why this absolute deep meditation is important for them, because they know that creating a little thought, something that goes into the deep of the unconscious mind, or that is embedded in any sort of belief, will create something, will put something into motion, will start perhaps to collapse that wave function of possibilities into something. And that's where the new age ideas come, and you attract all these things, and so on and so forth. So going back into a more pragmatic outlook on this, after seeing how perhaps some of these ancient philosophies might have been talking about all of this before we started the new research, and why the double-blind experiments might not work, it might all have to do with the perception of reality. This is what the double-slit experiment was saying. Perhaps there is no fully objective reality, but our perception, our conscious thoughts, could have an impact into things, and this goes completely against the traditional classical physics, the classical mechanics of reality that we understand. This goes against everything, and it opens a sea of possibilities, even for an alternative medicine. But what these scientists are doing, like Andy Gunter Brown, they are trying to find empirical ways to prove this, and they are being successful at it. As I said, that research of Dean Radin and Bill Bankston, they're proving some amazing things, and it's something that doctors, policymakers, and even people who are just going through suffering, and just especially now with some disease that is going and making the run for the latter years of our history. Maybe this is something important to know at the moment. So there is a possibility that there are these two worlds working at the same time, the world of the physical and the world of the non-physical. And if conscious intent ideas could somehow manifest or affect reality, then it could be very clear how these double-blind experiments, triple-blind experiments might not be as efficient as what she calls the PIP, as having contact with people, as having many people in a ritual like the ancient Native American rituals, being present into a healing, because it is their consciousness, it is their collective consciousness, which perhaps affects the reality, the physical reality that we are navigating. And this also has to do with the placebo effect. So on that NCBI document that I had before, it says that we have to discard some of the results because it could be the placebo effect. What is the placebo effect? If the person, Daisy, or some of the subjects that she's talking about this, if the subject in the Native American healing knows about the healing and creates in their own subconscious a karmic seed, or if they start binding in their mind, in the quote-unquote heavens, in Uranus, bringing into Earth through this quote-unquote placebo effect, what is the implication here? I talked about the implications in the original video on the placebo effect. The implication is that this person is creating physical, objective results based on something that does not exist, something that exists only in their minds. They're creating physical results out of an idea. They're collapsing the wave function into a possible reality. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.